I'm Lisa Colbert, the Field Marketing Manager here at Second Watch, and I'll be your MC today. Thank you to our AWS partners for joining Barbecue and Beer with Second Watch. I hope you've received the Instacart or Grubhub gift cards that I sent to you and were able to place your orders. But if you had any issues, please don't hesitate to reach out and I'll do my best to help get you squared away. We are looking forward to a successful SCO next week and hope that you'll stop by the Second Watch sponsor page for a chat and to sign up to receive exclusive swag specifically designed for SCO this year. Now I'll hand it over to John Hancock, our Enterprise Account Executive here at Second Watch, for a few remarks.
Second Watch, I'll give you the quick overview. Original premier partner within AWS. What we do evolve is strategy. Rationalization of workloads, what makes sense in cloud, what doesn't make sense in cloud, how do you get it there? Can you refactor? Can you lift and shift? All the things that everybody on this call is very familiar with. Lot of DevOps security data and application modernization within this strategy and advisory kind of section. The accelerate, I always refer to this as all the reasons that we have customers go into the cloud and then they stop sometimes, right? So are you automating? Are you paying for what you use? Are you going after containerized environments? Are you using RDS, Redshift, and these great tools that Amazon's developed the last 5 and 7 years that enterprises are using? What are you doing with your data and analytics? Are you actually seeing outcomes? So I saw an interesting article we published the other day. Do you have a data lake or a data swamp, right? Are you actually seeing outcomes within your data and analytics? And sorry, I'm just admitting some people in as we're talking here. So that's that middle section, maturation. A lot late last year and this year around application modernization as well. A ton of that going on. And then optimize, which is called MSP, right? For the Amazon acronym, we call it MCS, Managed Cloud Services. We're very good here. Overall, Second Watch's Net Promoter Score is 85%. Most of that is derived from this ongoing operations portion. Generally, we talk to customers about taking on their operations their first 6 to 12 months to kind of de-risk, make sure they've got the right tooling in place, get their teams comfortable with kind of Amazon muscle, right, built up while they're going through training. But yeah, a Net Promoter Score of 85% here means if you guys get those really annoying emails that go, hey, would you recommend us, right? If you say a 9 or 10 on that question, then you're a net promoter. In this industry, like 30% to 50% is pretty good, right? People don't call us to do like the really easy stuff. They call us to do the hard stuff. So people that had 85% net promoter scores, that's usually like Apple and iPhone users and watch users, right? Consumer goods industries. It's not in this industry. So we're very proud of that. We do great work with our customers. I'm going to tell you just a couple other things about Second Watch from a cultural standpoint, because I think it's important to know. And I've worked at a couple premier partners. So these are things I would want to know if I was AWS. Our approach, we use small teams. Most of our engagements are a project manager, a senior resource, and a junior resource. Our resources are going to be more tenured than most. Senior resource is going to be 10 plus years. A junior resource is going to be 5+ years. Every person that works at Second Watch is certified, multiple certifications. I've got 4 certifications and I'm the sales guy, right? So I like to share that with people. We like to come in with small teams and work side by side with customers. So if you're looking for a partner that's like, hey, go through this checklist and get everything done, we're not a good fit there. We're a really good fit to come in, work side by side, do advisory, do strategy, do hands-on keyboards, and go after outcomes. But we like to uplift and work along with your teams, right? So if you have that customer, it's like, hey, we want to learn this, we want to get better at it, we want to grow stronger. Second Watch is a really good fit. So I will kind of end there because I told you it's going to be very quick commercial, but we do have an Amazonian, Dave, that we work with at Technip FMC. And he's just going to talk a little bit about the experience of working with Second Watch. The reason I put these really weird red crown marks on here, this is where we work with Technip FMC currently, right? So one of the stories that hopefully this tells is we can come in and we do strategy, but our customers really like us and they keep coming to us and we do more with them and we continue to mature with them over a journey of time. So one example of that, I had somebody contact us recently and say, hey, will you guys go and set up a data lake? And there weren't really outcomes that we were going after. And it just seemed like a data lake only. It's not a good customer, probably for Second Watch, right? We don't go after 100 new logos a year. We like to find good customer fits, do a really good job, and just kind of continue to mature with those customers and help them navigate transformation over the years. So I'm going to drink now. I encourage everyone else to do that as well. And Dave, thanks for volunteering to say a couple words about us. Good job, Harry.
Thanks, John. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, so John and I just talked and said I'd maybe speak a few words. I know that, this is not an event where we're going to go into a lot of detail. So I'm shooting from the cuff a little bit or at the hip, or whatever you want to consider that. Nothing has been planned. But I think I want to just kind of reflect back on how the Second Watch and AWS relationship started, particularly with Technip FMC. And everybody at AWS knows that we have these leadership principles, and the leadership principles are really what drive everything that we do at AWS. And we kind of look at revenue and commission, or how we get measured in sales, as kind of a lagging indicator, because our whole goal is put the customer first, earn their trust and do the right thing by the customer. And that's one of the things that I think we did really well early on at Second Watch. When we got into our partnership, there was a little bit of that early, what I call dating, where we weren't really sure what each other was going to do. And there's a little bit of a trust issue, but everybody really opened up, shared their concerns. We really worked on earning trust early on in the relationship. And the one thing that solidified that relationship between Second Watch and AWS was, we said, we're going to put the customer first. We're going to be customer obsessed, and whatever that means, whether that means, that the customer will use AWS or Second Watch, we're going to use that as kind of our North Star and our guiding principle. So since that time, I mean, me and John and Ryan and Hussam and the team, we get together regularly. We review what's best for the customer. We look at what are some of the joint solution sets that we can offer better together, the whole better together story. And I think overall, we've been in the partnership for, 6 months, I would say, give or take. And I think it's working out really well. And I think from a customer's perspective, they're seeing Second Watch as a key partner. And since they're standardizing on AWS, especially around the data analytics and the data warehouse side of it, and Second Watch being the MSP, I think that early building trust has been really, really, really helpful for the partnership. With that, I will say that, along the way, every partnership has a couple bumps in the road. We're no exception. There are a couple of times where, I would make a recommendation and we would, try that approach. Didn't always succeed, but the key is we took a direction. We stuck with it as a partnership. We're learning together and we're growing together. So I'll just close with that, John. I don't want to, take up too much time, but I think Second Watch is a great partner and one that we're going to continue to work with, and looking forward to a great 2021 with you guys. And here's a cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you so much, Dave. Awesome working with you, man. Really, really have enjoyed it and learned a lot, and appreciate the relationship we've created. So thanks for spending a couple minutes there. Let's turn it over to the gentleman with all the trophies in the background, and the guy that knows how to cook real barbecue, even for Texans here. So Lisa, you can stop sharing, and I think you've got a actual intro for Harry other than me just being really impressed with him.
I do. Thanks, John and Dave. We are barbecuing today with TLC's BBQ Pitmasters Season 1 winner, Barbecue Grand Champion Pitmaster, cooking instructor, and owner of Slap Yo Daddy Barbecue, Harry Soo. Harry is going to show you some competition black belt tips and tricks you can use in your backyard brisket to get the competition brisket appearance, taste, and tenderness. These techniques helped Harry win first place in the Kansas City BBQ Society's National Brisket Championship. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Harry.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So we're going to do a impossible, insane session. Why do I say that? We're going to try to show you guys how to cook a 10 or 12-hour brisket in literally 29 minutes. So how we're going to do that is I started your brisket for you at 3 a.m. on the first brisket, and then we started the second brisket at 7 a.m. So I'm going to talk you through all of the 10 or so steps involved in cooking brisket. I'm going to talk a little bit about the animal itself, which is the brisket you see right here. Talk about the muscles, the grades of beef, where you might be able to buy a good brisket. What does a good brisket look like, feel like? Show you guys how to trim that brisket with some competition techniques. Teach you guys how to make an optional brisket injection, how to apply a rub product, which we're going to do add some of my First Place USA product on it, which I believe Lisa's going to send to you. We're going to cook it in the pit, get it to a point where it's ready to be wrapped, show you how to wrap using my secret 3-sided Huggy baby wrap technique, and then show you guys how to cook it to perfection so that you can score 9 perfect scores on your appearance, on your taste, and your tenderness. All right, so that's what we're going to try to do in the next 30 minutes. Anybody have any questions before we get started? Okay, cool. So the first things first, right? So obviously the brisket comes from a cow, and this is known as a packer brisket. A packer brisket means that both of the chest muscles of the cow are intact, and it's consisting of 2 muscles. It's called pectoralis major and minor, but in Texas, you call it the fatty, or the lean, or the moist, or the flat, or the point. So this is how a brisket looks like. So if you notice on my side here, this brisket is curving this way. So this brisket sits on the right chest of the cow, so it's known as a right brisket. I went to Texas Tech, and every self-respecting Texan will tell you the best briskets come from the left breast of the cow. So when you go to the store, try to find as many of the left briskets as you can, put into a pile, and then pick the best brisket from the left-hand side of the cow, okay? Now, that is what they say in Texas, but I'm from California, so we pick the right brisket. So go figure, right? So when you buy a brisket, you can buy it with just the flat muscle alone, and you can go to Costco in Los Angeles, where I live. Costco sells just the flat, but I prefer to cook both the point and the flat, because 40 years ago, I arrived in America, went to Texas Tech, and within the first week of going to Texas Tech, my classmate took me out for brisket. I took that one bite of Texas brisket, I fell in love, and I've been trying to cook it and perfect brisket ever since. I love the point muscle or the fatty or the moist versus the flat, but I'm going to show you guys how we trim the two. When you buy a brisket, you guys are aware that there are actually 8 grades of beef. The one that you're familiar with is Prime, Choice, and Select, PCS, which is easy to remember. What you may not be aware is there's 5 grades below that, such as a standard, a commercial, cookie, a cutter, canner, and utility. So those grades you don't see in the marketplace, but sometimes when you buy ground beef, they include some of the lower grades of beef. Now, the way you select a brisket is, I'll bring my camera over so I can show you. So the 4 criteria by which you select a brisket is called size, symmetry, marbling, and striations. So these 4 criteria, right, involve the symmetry. So you can see this brisket is a 15-pound packer brisket. It has what we call symmetry. That means that the pectoralis major and minor muscle on the cow has symmetry. Now, if you're a backyard person, you don't really need to worry. But if you're a competitor, I want to have perfect slices for my judging box. And you can see this brisket has a nice symmetry to it. It's got what we call striations. You can see the fat layer kind of going this way. Okay, you can see the fat going this way. So these are called striations. And then the marbling is the striations across crosswise. So over here, you can see striations and you can see marbling right here. So you can see all that wonderful marbling, and that's how you pick a brisket. So when you go to the store, you want to find yourself a big briskets because Harry loves big briskets and he cannot lie. And I like 15 pounds and up because I feel they cook better. I don't care for those small 10-pound briskets because I find that they dry out very easily in the pit. So I cook 15 pounds and above. This one is about 15 pounds. Looking for striations, size, and symmetry. Those are the 4 criteria on how you select a brisket. Now you can find briskets pretty much anywhere in Texas. You know, HEB, you have plenty of sources in Texas. For those viewers watching this program who are not from Texas, you can usually find briskets at Sam's Club. You can find it at Home Depot. My local Walmart here carries brisket. You can also find it at Restaurant Depot if you want a good one. You can also buy briskets online. And the brisket that I like to buy is from Creekstone Farm if you like Angus briskets. If you like Wagyu, I buy that from Snake River Farms. There's approximately 4 or 5 kinds of brisket types out there. The good ones are Angus and the ones from Wagyu. Either you buy a Japanese Wagyu, purebred, which will cost you about $1,000, or you can get yourself a American crossbred Wagyu for about $300. So the normal brisket is about between say $60 to $80, depending on where you're at. I believe in Los Angeles, the pricing on Prime is about $3.50 a pound. So that's kind of a little bit about briskets, where to get them. In Texas, you probably buy a lot cheaper because beef is a lot easier to come by in Texas. We'll show you guys how we trim a brisket now. And I'm going to show you how we kind of trim it competition style, a little bit of backyard style. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take the brisket out. And you can buy a brisket that is from the store and you can take it home to age it. You can age a brisket in your refrigerator between 34 to 36 degrees. You can age it for up to 60 days. Now, I don't recommend you do that in your refrigerator in the kitchen because your kids will be opening the refrigerator. The meat's going to go bad. But if you have a refrigerator in the garage where you keep your adult beverages that you can keep cool at around 34 to 36 degrees, that will be ideal. This is called the purge, right? So this is very, very toxic. So please do not ever wash your brisket in the sink because you will transfer the pathogens onto the sink handle. Your children will come up to the sink and touch the handle, and then they'll touch the refrigerator. And next thing you know, your kitchen is a biohazard zone. So always make sure the purge is removed and you carefully throw in the trash. And you use some paper towels to kind of dry your brisket. And we'll show you guys how to do a quick trim. Now, this brisket is consisting of 2 muscles. So this is the flat right here, and this is the point. So what I like to try to do is I like to try to remove all of the fat of the point muscle because I like burn ends. So this is where the burn ends come from, or the moist or the fatty in Texas. For those who are not from Texas who are watching this program, when you go up to a Texas barbecue restaurant and the meat cutter asks you what kind of meat you want, they always ask you moist or lean or fatty. The point muscle is, in my opinion, the best tasting part. So we're gonna show you guys how we trim. First thing we wanna do is you can see all this fat here that's on the brisket, the fascia and the silver skin. This comes off because you don't want to have the fat between your rub and the protein. So what I like to try to do is I'm gonna trim it all off. Now, because of time, I'm just gonna skip this and show you guys an example here of trimming some of the fascia and the silver skin of the brisket. Usually, if I have more time and I'm doing this at home, I would do a better job of trimming off all of the pieces of the silver skin like so. This is how the silver skin looks like. And this will prevent the rub from sticking. There's a big old hump cut eye here. We trim the eye off. So I'm gonna run my knife right into the eye and we're gonna try to cut out the eye. And this is something a little bit more than say a catering trim or restaurant trim because if you're doing it at home, I like to remove most of the fat of the 2 layers that separate the point and the flat. So I'm trimming this way. Flip it around so you can see. So what I'm doing is I'm running my knife underneath the muscle here, trimming off the fat layer. So try to get underneath this muscle here. So here's the flat and here's the point muscle. And the burn ends, are the yummy parts. It's very important to be able to get seasoning on the burn end and also to get crust to form. So now I'm going to flip it over. Trim off all of the fat of the burn end. There's a lot of fat here, and this fat will not render. So you want to trim it off so that you can get the crust or the bark to set right on the protein itself. So and a lot of this fat, right? People always ask me, Harry, what do you do with this fat? You can use this to make beef tallow, which makes great French fries from the rendered beef oil. Some people also render the beef fat to make soap. So for those of you who are into crafting and organic stuff, you can actually make your own soap using this. You can grind this also with your hamburger meat. If you have like venison that's very lean, you can grind some of this fat also into it. And you can use this to add to the fat that when you make sausages. So you can really repurpose this if you like. Any questions so far before we continue? All right, just let me do a quick trim on this.
Real quick is, yeah, I was gonna say, how far do you go? Because there's obviously a bigger fat cap all the way down. How far do you go?
You want to get all the way to where you can see the protein, because you want the seasoning to touch the protein and not the fat, because the fat will essentially dissolve at around 150 degrees. And once the fat dissolves, all that rub will fall off with the fat. So this is kind of how the point muscle looks like. It's all so once you get the rub on it, it's gonna have a nice flavor, nice crust, you know, on it. Flip it over, finish this side here. So, and this is now ready for the next phase. So this is a rough backyard trim. In a competition, I would do two things. So if you can see this now, this is suitable for backyard, for catering, for restaurant. But if I'm going, I cut this piece off, I'm gonna show you. The reason I cut this piece off is because this piece overhangs the point. And if I have an overhang here, I'm not gonna get nice crust, and I'm not gonna be able to create championship grade cubed burnt ends for barbecue judging. But this is optional, you don't have to do this, but I just wanna show you the drastic difference between a competition trim and a backyard trim. The other thing I do, if this is a competition, is also I trim off the tail end here because it's too thin. I'm not gonna use this part, so this part comes off. Also, this edge here is too thin. I'm gonna block trim it so that it gets into a nice block. So now I know that I'm going to get perfect slices for the judges right here. So this is how you win a $10,000 check. And you know, there's quite a lot of waste involved, but for backyard, just ignore what I just showed you. Go ahead and keep these pieces on. Any questions? All right, so that's the trimming of the brisket. Let me move my cutting board. Next thing, let's go to how you prep the brisket after you trim it. Now, an optional step is to use something called an injection. What's an injection? An injection is nothing more than a marinade that you put into the middle of the meat using something called a injector or syringe. This is completely optional, but I will share with you what I do in competition. I put a commercial injection into my meat, and these are some of the brands that are out there. You can buy Cosmos, Big Papa. There's a whole bunch of brands out there, and I do have a YouTube video if you want to see my shootout of 8 different types of commercial injections. You can also take 2 cans of beef broth, like so, and you boil down the 2 cans into 1 can of liquid, and you can use this salty beef broth to inject your brisket. Now, you don't need to do this if you don't want to. This is completely optional, but in competition, I'm up against 100 teams. So in order to win the first place, I have to wow 24 strangers. So we just have to use more elaborate and complex methods to gain that edge in the flavor. So what I've done is I've shown you the different injections, the dry powder. You take the dry powder and you mix it into water, and this is how it looks like. So it's a little brown liquid like so. We're gonna inject this brown liquid now into the brisket. So I'm gonna show you guys how we do that. There's a special couple of tricks here involved here. You need to get a syringe. This is from Amazon, and this particular one has a green kind of a molding on it. This is the one I recommend you get because the other injectors on the internet they're all crap. They'll fall apart on you. But this one is a pretty sturdy one. And the first thing you want to do is when you inject, you want to get some beef Vaseline like so on the seal. So in the middle of COVID now, I guess, if you are, getting a vaccine and somebody shows up with a needle this size, I think you run for the hills here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some of this injection into the brisket here. And what you do is you fill up the injection. It's very important you hold the barrel and then you push it into the meat. And I always inject with the grain. All right. Now, this is a 3-hour argument in Jerry Springer fist fight, because as I always tell people, everything in barbecue is a 3-hour argument because there are so many ways to cook good barbecue. My friends in Texas will tell me, Harry, what's this, all this malarkey with the injection? We just put salt and pepper. That's fine. My buddy Aaron, who owns Franklin's restaurant, he just uses salt and pepper. I have a few other of my friends in Texas at Pecan Lodge, Pinkertons in Houston. They just use basically salt and pepper. But, I'm a competitor. I have to up my game because I'm up against competitors and I need to differentiate my product. We're talking earlier about something called the purple cow. Purple cow means that when you have 100 people doing the same thing and you turn in something a little bit different with that little purple cow difference, that's how you separate yourself from the pack, and that's how you win awards across the country. And always try to be a leader, not a follower. If everybody's doing red, you do green, you come out way ahead. And I use that also in life because I always tell my project managers that when they do things, don't try something that has failed because repeating the same method is going to be just insanity. You're not going to be successful. So I'm going to pretend like I injected everything so I can move to the next phase. So I'm going to pause here after the injection for any questions.
I have a question. This is Elisha. I don't know that I followed exactly. So are you saying that what you put in the injection, is that the beef broth plus the dry, plus the seasoning?
You have an option of using a beef broth, like a can, okay, or use a commercial injection, something that looks like this. And you can buy this off Amazon. There's plenty of people who sell this. So both ways work. Injection is purely optional. My friends in Texas, they don't inject, but I always tell them in the competition, you have to do whatever you need to do to win. This is the competition technique I'm showing you. You don't have to follow it. Just regular rub on the meat will also work fine. But we're taking you guys to black belt status today.
I like that. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So imagine that I've injected it all. Now I'm going to apply the rub. So I'm going to use my first place moolah rub. I use this to win first place in many, many different categories. This is particularly good in beef. It's got a couple of secret ingredients in there. It's got something called shiitake mushroom, which is a guanylate, and then another one called Worcestershire, which is inosine. So it's got a few secret ingredients in here that will allow you to up your game. You can make your own rub, but I find, if you want to use mine, Lisa's going to be sending it to you. So you can definitely try it out and see if it works for you. Many, many teams across America have won first place using this rub. I had teams even from Australia that made it to the United States for the finals, beef finals, just using this product here. So you apply a nice even coating. How much you apply is going to be, I hope you can see this now. I'm going to apply it until the bottom layer is opaque, and then just repeat again. So you apply 2 layers of rub, and you always pat a rub down. You never rub a rub, you always pat a rub down. And then you notice how I flipped it over and I did the bottom side of the point muscle. That's also very important. Okay, so that's the rub. Now the rub needs to sit for 4 hours. The injection that I just did for competition sits for 8 hours. So these are very specific, what I call techno-weenie steps. You really don't have to follow them. But for those viewers who really want to compete, take home a $10,000 check, I am showing you the actual recipe that I used to win first place USA in the KCBS Brisket National Championship. So I beat 7,000 teams to first place using exactly what I'm showing you. And if you try this, I think you'll be really successful. Okay, so I'm going to now take this now, pretend like it's been sitting for 8 hours, and I'm going to put it into the smoker, and I'm going to take it outside.
May I ask another question while you're doing it? And I apologize if you already covered it, but the knife that you used and where you got it from?
Okay.
And then also, second question, third question maybe. When you're letting the seasoning set on there for 8 hours, is it just out?
No, it's
Or
got
is
to be
it
in the refrigerator. In the refrigerator.
In the fridge,
So that-
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Obviously, you want to keep your food safe. All food should be kept in below 40 degrees. All cooked food should be kept above 140. So 140 is known as the danger zone. You don't want to keep food in that zone. That's why when you go to a buffet, the salad bar is under ice, and then the hot food is under chafing trays. All right. Now, so knife, you can use any kind of boning knife. The knife I use that you saw me use is called a Dalstrong, DALSTRONG. And if you guys are interested, I can share my Amazon store link with you, because I put all my doodads on Amazon, because a lot of my viewers on YouTube, Instagram, and so on, they all know that I am very cost efficient and process efficient, aka I'm cheap and lazy. So stuff that I buy is got to withstand the torture test of being on a competition circuit. So I cook, in my heyday, 35 contests a year across America. I drive about 26,000 miles a year. And all the gear that I use has to withstand the brutal, torturous use under those kinds of settings. So I put all my products that I use. For example, I mentioned the injector. I get tired of using injectors that break. So that's the injector that has withstood the test of time. So hopefully that answers your question about the knife. What was the other question that somebody asked also? Let me pause
My question is, are you injecting, putting in the refrigerator for 8 hours and then taking out, putting the rub on and then putting it back for 4 hours? So it's a total of 12 hours. Is that correct?
A total of 8. So I put in the marinade in the fridge for 8 hours. And then after 4 hours, I take it out, I put the rub on, and the rub on stays for 4 hours. Now, I say that that's what I do in a competition against like 100 teams. But at home, if you inject and you rub and you cook, you will blow people away with the championship flavor. But if you really want to follow like my really detailed method, it's 8 hours marinade with the injection and 4 hours with the rub. Okay, let me open this up without tripping over here.
What's the home smoker you're using here?
This is a Weber. This is a smoke fire, and I had I had 22 smokers here. You can see lots and lots of equipment here. So people collect cars, collect shoes. I collect pits. So that's my little thing. So I'm gonna put the brisket on. I'm gonna show you another black belt trick here. You see these little wooden blocks? So this is the trick to allow you to let the brisket sit so that you create a dome shape. So a lot of times people cook brisket, they don't have a good crust just because they don't use this trick I have. So what I've done is I prop my brisket up so it creates a dome shape so that the liquid will drain. I'm gonna get perfect crust. Now, after you start cooking the brisket, right? After about a few hours, it's gonna start to crust up. And once it crusts up, it's gonna look like that. So this is the brisket about 9 hours later. You can see the two differences here. So you need to spray water with your brisket to keep it moist. And once the brisket reaches a point, right, where the crust has set, you can remove it. So let me change my gloves here so I can show you how to check the brisket for being set. And a lot of people who cook brisket and who are not successful, they basically made the main mistake here, which they did not wait until the crust set. So if you look and see here, right, when I touch it, I'm scratching the brisket. You notice that none of the wet rub comes off. The rub is completely dry. So once it's completely dry, in about 9 hours, you need to take it off. So let me get another clean tray and I'll take off this brisket so I can show you the next step.
Harry, how often do you spray with water? Is it every hour, every 30 minutes?
I like to go by look. So for example, right now it's dry. So sometimes certain briskets are very thirsty. When they're very thirsty, you want to spray them every 20, 30 minutes or so. This is the time when it's good to have an assistant to help you out. If the brisket is wet, then don't spray. But as soon as you see the brisket drying out, go ahead and spray it. All right, let me take it off. Now, when I take it off, right, you're gonna see the wooden blocks underneath because the brisket now has a nice shape, and this is the black belt tip to ensure that there's no pooling of liquid. Because if you don't do this, right, sometimes the brisket pools and you're not gonna get a perfect competition grade crust. Look at how beautiful this thing is. Put it over here. And these are the blocks that I put in for last night.
That looks like, is that mesquite wood block you're using?
No,
Just
it's
curious.
just something off my wood pile. It's probably hickory. I like to
Okay.
cook with hickory, pecan, cherry. Those are my favorites. All right, so here you can see I'm gonna move this brisket onto a foil, and I'll show you the specific foiling technique that I use.
The pellets you just, or the flavors you just mentioned, the wood you just mentioned, is that the same for the pellets? If you're using like a Traeger or a pellet grill?
Yeah, you would use whatever pellets you like. I like GMG Gold Blend. Now, you notice that I put the brisket onto a sheet of foil, and underneath it are 2 sheets of foil. So this is a specific technique. I'm going to show you guys how this works and how you use this technique to rehydrate your brisket. So I put it on a foil sheet here. I'm going to make a boat.
Butcher block or butcher paper instead of aluminum foil if you don't have aluminum foil handy.
You can use butcher paper, and butcher paper will create a different end result. And it's a 3-hour argument and Jerry Springer fist fight as to which is better. But I'm going to show you the technique I use to win First Place USA.
I was just saying, if you don't have aluminum foil, that seems to be a commodity around my house. Could you use it if you didn't have aluminum foil? Not which is better. Is better. But
You can use, you can use butcher paper. I have people who also don't wrap it, and that's fine. So again, like I said, everything in barbecue is a 3-hour argument, and you can do it naked. You can do it wrapped in foil. You can do it wrapped in butcher paper. And there are aficionados in all 3 camps. I'm showing you what I use to win first place. So I use a foil boat like so, and I'm going to put a can of broth to rehydrate it. Now watch very carefully what happens to the broth when I put it in. You see what's happening?
Soaking.
It's soaking in. So this is a very important black belt tip. This is how you win first place in your backyard, among your friends, impress your poker buddies. What I'm doing is I'm doing rehydrating the brisket. So you have to take your time. You're going to get about 1 can. 1 can is not enough. Use 2 cans. You're going to have to rehydrate the brisket and wait for the brisket to soak up this liquid, because this is how you create a championship moistness and flavor within the brisket. So if you take your time and you do this, eventually this brisket will soak in about 10 ounces, 1 can or more of the beef broth. And that's going to preserve the moistness in your brisket and give you the championship tenderness and flavor. So I'm just going to rush through this and then kind of just pour everything on. But I usually take my time and slowly rehydrate the brisket so that it's completely filled with this beef broth, so that it rehydrates itself and it's going to be super, super moist and tender. Now, I put the foil about halfway, like so that I can fold this now over like so. And I'm going to roll 3 sides, like so that it creates a watertight, airtight seal. Create a little papoose. You notice how I'm pushing the air out? When you do that, right, that allows a lot of that liquid from the can of broth to go up the side of the brisket. And you notice that I wrap this with the fat side down. I want the fat side up. And now this is ready to go back into the pit at your preferred temperature. Now, some people like to cook brisket at 250, some like 225, some at 275. It doesn't really matter what temperature you use, so long as you have good technique, because they all kind of work. If you want to do it faster, you can do it at 275. If you want to take it a little bit longer, you can do it at 225. Some people argue that low and slow is better, but I find that it has to do with more the animal. So if you have a lower grade of beef, like a select grade, I find that cooking it lower temperature seems better. When you have something like a prime, which has more fat, I find cooking it at 275 is better, because the high heat renders the fat better, makes the brisket more tender. But again, that's another 3-hour argument and Jerry Springer fist fight. Now, once you reach this stage and you wrap it, right, you put it back into the pan so it doesn't leak. You can put this entire package back into the pit, or you can go ahead and put this in the oven. Now, oven is good because oven is really very less expensive, and it's not, you don't need any effort to run your oven. Now, once you wrap it, it needs only heat or BTU. So BTU is BTU is BTU. The brisket doesn't care if it's sitting in the pit or it's sitting in the oven. So as I told you, I'm cheap and lazy, so I like to leave it in the oven, because when you do this, you can go have a shower, enjoy an adult beverage, turn the TV on, and then wait until your poker buddies show up. Then about like half hour before they show up, take it from the oven and put it back in the pit, spray your face with water, dab some sauce on your shirt, and then when the doorbell rings, you tell your poker buddies that you spend 12 hours cooking brisket, leave you $50 in the tip jar before they come into your home. All right. So I'm going to take this now into the house and pop it in the oven, because I don't need to have BTU in the pit, because you have to run pellets on it. And we're going to pop it into a 275-degree oven. And this is how it looks like after it sits in the oven for a couple of hours. Now, you want to get the brisket to be tender in the oven, primarily because you want to render the collagen. Okay. Now, how do you tell a brisket is ready? It's a very, very simple method. You can use a thermometer, but I teach all my students to lock away their thermometer before they start, because all they need is this thing. Okay, this is a bamboo skewer, right? So you cook your meat until it's probe tender. So you probe it through the foil like so. It goes in like peanut butter. That means that the brisket is ready. This is a much more reliable black belt way of cooking brisket, because it does not rely on the variability of the animal. A lot of people go with temperature. I've taught 3,500 students across the world. This method is 100% accurate 100% of the time. Using a thermometer is iffy, because every animal will become tender at different temperatures. The temperature ranges from 195 to 215 degrees. So temperature is not a good guide. Follow my championship method and use a bamboo skewer. And if you really want to practice this, you can have a jar of cold peanut butter, and you can poke one of the bamboo skewers in peanut butter and one bamboo skewer in the meat. Once the two bamboo skewers feel the same, your meat's done. Total disregard to temperature. So if you want to try my method, cooking until crust sets, wrap it in foil and pull when it's tender. Lock your watch, lock your thermometer in the drawer before you start, and you will be a lot more successful. I trained a lot of teams to use this method, and they started winning championships as soon as they applied the method. Now you can see the brisket looks really good. We'll take it out now carefully, show you guys how we de-fat the brisket. Try not to burn myself here. Too warm. This has cooled down for about almost 2 hours. So you really have to let your brisket cool down so that you can let it reabsorb the juices. I'm going to use something called a defatter, and I'm going to pour the jus into the defatter to show you how we prep the brisket slices so that you can get that wonderful moist flavor and get a perfect score in every bite from your family and friends. Okay, and put it aside.
Yes, can you open the front door? I'm knocking on the door.
They haven't invented smell-o-vision yet, but when they do, I will be able to do classes with smell-o-vision here. So here's the brisket here, and we will show you guys how we prep the brisket. So the point is here, right? The fatty is here, and then the flat is here. I'm going to slice it now. Now, the knife that you want to use on slicing is a slicer. You can get one slicer like this, or you can splurge and get something like this. This is known as a Masamoto KS. So this is one of the most highly desired knives in the world. It's from Japan, and I have the Swedish steel Masamoto. So for those of you who are really like knife nuts, I have 65 knives, so I'm a bona fide knife nut. This is a beautiful knife to use. It's about $700-800, but you know, it's one of those things you buy once in your life and you pass on to the next generation. But this knife is absolutely gorgeous. You can also use a regular slicer. Both really work. But I'm going to use my Japanese knife here. So what you do is you run your knife right where the point and the flat muscle is, and you slice off like butter. And this part is called the flat. This part is called the point, or the moist, or the fatty. This is called the lean or the flat. Now, I like to put a little bit of barbecue sauce on it. I have my barbecue sauce here. Put a little bit on the flat. Now, this is blasphemy, and I know a Texan would never put sauce on their brisket, but I'm showing you what won me a championship in Lubbock, Texas. So I competed in Lubbock and beat 75, 80 teams in brisket to reserve champion. And this is what I did because I followed the purple cow theory, because I realized that if I cook brisket in Texas, the same as the other 79 teams, I'm not gonna win. So on that day, I decided to cook the kind of flavor profiles that I cook when I'm in California winning contests. And I decided to cook it my way, and the judges really loved it. Good enough for reserve champion in Lubbock. So I'm gonna take a slice of the left and a slice of the right. And I'm gonna pick the better slice. If I'm gonna try to impress my mother-in-law, then I'm gonna pick the best slice that I can. Okay, and you can see something called the pink smoke ring, right? And the brisket has a nice drape on it. This is still hot, that's why. Nice drape on it like that. And the brisket is very tender. You do a pull test and it's super duper tender. So this brisket on the right-hand side is good. Let me now check the brisket on the left-hand side to see which one's better. So this one's same here, nice drape on it like so, right? Like a little accordion drape. Do a pull test, also very tender. So if in a contest, I would try a slice from the left and the right to see which one is more tender. Both are very tender, so it's about right. I'm gonna do a taste test now. I'm gonna bite a piece on the left first, piece on the right. Okay, so the left tastes better. So if I were serving my esteemed guests or judges, I would slice it from the left like so. And I would do about 7, 8 slices in a box, turn it in a styrofoam box, and go hopefully take home a $10,000 check to win the brisket category. So you can see how beautiful the brisket looks like so. Place it this way here. Okay, and I'm gonna show you now how to slice the other muscle. The grain for the other muscle runs this way like that. So for this to work, you have to slice it against the grain like so. And in Texas, what you want to do is when you get this in the restaurant and you ask for a moist or a fatty, which is this muscle, the restaurant will make it into slices. So I'll show you how a restaurant will slice it for you. We're going to slice it this way against the grain like so. And this is how you would be served in a restaurant in Texas, right? And this would be the slice of the fatty, a slice of the moist, or a slice of the point, right? So that's how it looks like. You see it's absolutely gorgeous, very tender. It's got a beautiful smoke ring around it. That's just good technique to get that smoke onto the meat. You want smoke, you want your meat to be kissed by smoke. You do not want it to be over smoked. So the right amount of smoke is just going to be a light smoke. You don't want to overdo it. That's why I don't use mesquite, because mesquite is very strong. I use essentially pecan, cherry, and apple and hickory. Those are my favorite woods. So I'm going to show you guys how in competition we do this. We make it into cubes like so. Little beautiful burn ends cubes. Little morsels of beef heaven. So, and I put a little bit of the jus on it. The jus now has defatted, so you can see that. So I'm going to squeeze the defatter and let's drip some of the jus onto the point to rehydrate it. I'm going to drop some of this jus onto the flat to rehydrate it. And there you have it. Some wonderful competition style, perfect cubes of brisket. And you can see the cube here. It's got a nice bark on both sides. So, and this is now like super juicy. I'm going to squeeze it and so you can see how juicy this thing is. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to taste one now. Mr. Beans is waiting. The dog is waiting for his little test. He's my certified barbecue judge. Absolutely amazing flavor. I'm gonna feed Mr. Beans and see. Okay, Beans, are you ready?
I've never been more jealous of a dog than right here, right now.
So Beans, I'm gonna give you the a piece of the point and piece of the flat, right? So you tell me which one you like better. So here's the flat. and I'm gonna give you a piece of the point, and then you gotta see which one you like better. So here's the point. Okay, what do you think? You like it, Beans? Okay, he's licking his tongue, his mouth, so I guess he really likes it. So that's a little very quick flyover of the steps involved in creating a competition grade brisket that you can apply to your backyard setting. Any questions?
Amazing.
Yeah,
Someone
looks
mentioned
awesome.
that your family says it's probably brisket again, but Harry actually invites first responders up to his house to eat all of the food that he cooks in these kind of events. Because could you imagine getting rid of 3 different briskets?
Yeah, I have the LA Fire Department and the what do you call, the LAPD. I have people who, after a long 12-hour shift, who are heading home. Even medical personnel who are fighting COVID. I have a white cooler outside my house, so a lot of this food here will be cut up, put into meal prep containers, and then I freeze it. And whenever they send me a text message, I'll leave it up my front door. They just swing by and pick up dinner on the way home. So thanks again to Second Watch for bringing me on and then helping me provide food also for first responders, because the world needs more kindness and love, and that's nothing really, in my opinion, better than giving out barbecue love.